The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled up to the farm gate, the sound sharp against the endless quiet. I'd driven hours from the city, hands still soft from typing reports under fluorescent hums, chasing letters that hinted at something real. She stood by the barn, pitchfork in grip, her calluses catching the late sun. Muscles taut under rolled sleeves as she lifted a bale, effortless. My chest tightened watching her, that pull I'd ignored too long. Isolation stretched everywhere, fields swallowing sound, no neighbors to break the wind. I stepped out, offering help for the harvest, but my palms felt exposed, too yielding against her world. She nodded, eyes steady, and handed me a tool. Our fingers brushed. Heat rose in the thick air. I came from the city stacks, papers piled high on my desk. The kind of work that left marks on my mind, but not my skin. Years of emails and deadlines had pulled me away, but her letters, short, deliberate, inked with farm grit, drew me back. They spoke of quiet days mending fences, of resilience carved from soil and storm. I needed that anchor, something beyond the commute's blur. The farm sprawled across acres, no houses in sight, just wind carrying the isolation like a secret held too tight. Cornstalks whispered against the horizon, the barn's wood weathered gray, air thick with damp earth and faint manure. She turned from the truck as I approached, her gaze unflinching, the kind that sized up a task before starting. "Glad you made it," she said, voice low, steady as the ground underfoot. Her hand extended, rough from years hauling feed, palm scarred like old leather. Mine met it, soft, unmarked, and the contrast hit hard, her calluses scraping light against my skin. She didn't pull away quick. That brush lingered, warmth seeping through. We moved to unloading the truck, bales stacked high in the bed. I watched her steady movements, shoulders flexing under the faded shirt, each lift precise, no waste. My chest tightened again, that fixation pulling at me. The way her arms corded, veins tracing paths I'd only read about in books. I grabbed a smaller bale, struggling with the weight, straw pricking through my gloves. She paused, eyes tracing my form, then stepped closer. "Like this," she murmured, hand on my elbow, guiding the shift. Her touch firm, grounding. The isolation amplified it. No traffic hum, just our breaths mixing with the rustle of leaves. I handed her a rope next, fingers overlapping brief, heat coiling low. Her skin warm, textured, against my smoother yield. Why did that difference stir something deep, like questioning my own edges? City life had softened me, left me adrift in abstractions. But here, her grounded strength felt like the answer I'd chased in those letters. We worked on, the sun dipping, her presence filling the vast quiet. My gaze held too long on her hands, the way they moved, sure, unflinching. The pull grew, unspoken, in the space between tasks. As we finished the load, she wiped her brow, eyes meeting mine with a nod. The barn loomed ahead, its shadows promising closer work. We stepped into the barn, the air heavier inside, thick with the scent of hay and damp wood. Shadows stretched long from the loft, the only light filtering through high slits in the walls. She led the way to the stalls, her boots thudding soft on the packed earth floor. Horses stirred in the dim, tails swishing lazy against the quiet. "Start with mucking," she said, handing me the pitchfork, its handle worn smooth from years in her grip. My fingers wrapped around it, the wood cool and unfamiliar, my palms already slick with nerves. I jabbed at the straw, the tines catching uneven, slipping through the wet muck below. The weight pulled heavy, a sodden drag that made my arms burn quick. Bits of it clung to my gloves, cold and clinging, the smell sharp, like turned soil after rain. I heaved, but the load tipped, scattering back into the stall. Frustration knotted in my chest, my body unpracticed, soft from desks and screens. She watched from the next stall over, her movements sure, pitchfork sinking clean and deep. Then she was there, close, her hand on my waist to steady me. Firm grip through my shirt, fingers splaying wide, anchoring. Her breath brushed my neck, warm against the barn's chill. carrying sweat and earth mixing with the muck's tang. I froze, the pitchfork forgotten, her touch pressing just enough to shift my balance. Vulnerability hit raw, my edges exposed, yielding under her hold. But in that correction, desire flickered, her focus pulling at me, steady and unflinching. "You're city polished," she murmured, voice low, eyes tracing the lines of my arms, my shoulders. No judgment, just fact, like noting the weather. Her words hung in the isolation, no one to hear but the horse's soft snorts. I nodded, breath catching, her hand lingering a beat before releasing. We worked side by side then, her shoulders flexing nearby as she forked another load, muscles taut under the thin fabric. My gaze held too long, tracing the play of light on her skin, the contrast deepening. Her hardness against my give, stirring something coiled tight. The wind whistled faint through the cracks, underscoring our rhythm, breaths sinking in the empty space. No interruptions, just the scrape of tools and the building heat between us. Isolation turning every glance electric. She corrected me again, hand brushing my hip this time, guiding the swing. I felt the pull sharpen, unspoken, in the vast quiet. As the stalls cleared, she straightened, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Fence needs fixing outside," she said, nodding toward the door. The fields waited, open and endless, mirroring the private stretch between us. We stepped out into the open fields, the sun hanging lower now, casting long shadows across the wire and posts. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant rain, the isolation vast under the wide sky. No fences mark neighbors, just acres stretching to blur the horizon. She pointed to a sagging line, posts leaning from winter's weight, barbed wire loose and tangled. "Hammer and nails," she said, handing me the tool, its head heavy in my grip. My fingers adjusted, soft against the worn handle, unaccustomed to the swing. I knelt by the first post, nail between my lips, tasting metal. The hammer came down awkward, glancing off, the nail bending under the weak strike. Wood splintered slight, my arm jarring from the miss. Frustration built, my body protesting the effort, muscles unused to such direct force. She watched, then took the hammer, demonstrating. Her swings precise, strong, each blow sinking the nail clean, shoulders rolling with controlled power. Muscles flexed taut under her shirt, the rhythm steady, like she'd measured the world against her own strength. She set it down, eyes on me. "Your turn." I tried again, but the nail twisted. Then her hand covered mine on the hammer, warm and rough, calluses pressing into my skin. She guided the motion, her fingers firm over mine, aligning the strike. Skin met skin, her texture scraping light, heat spreading from the contact. We leaned in close, her waist brushing mine as she adjusted my stance, the proximity sending a jolt through me. My heart thudded, loud like distant thunder rolling over the fields, breath catching in the open air. She held there a moment, her reserve cracking with a brief smile at my effort, voice softening in the isolation. "Better," she murmured, low, the sound pulling at something deep. No one around to hear, just the wind whipping the grass, underscoring the quiet between us. I felt my body respond, warmth coiling low from her touch, the contrast sharpening, her grounded hardness against my yield. Desire built inside, imagining those hands exploring beyond the task, tracing lines I'd hidden under city layers. But I pushed it down, focusing on the nail, the wood giving under our joined effort. She released slow, eyes meeting mine as she stepped back, acknowledging the electric undercurrent without words. A pause hung, heavy in the vast quiet, her gaze unflinching, pulling me in deeper. As the sun lowered, fatigue settled in our limbs. "Hay baling next," she said, nodding toward the loft. The dimming light drew us closer, shadows lengthening in the fading day. We climbed the ladder to the loft, the rungs creaking under our weight, the air growing thicker with each step. Dust motes swirled in the slanting light from the small window. The loft a confined world of stacked bales and shadowed corners. The isolation felt deeper up here, cut off from the fields below. just the faint creak of the barn settling and our breaths marking the quiet. She moved ahead, grabbing a bale from the edge, her muscles taut under the thin shirt as she hefted it without strain. The fabric pulled tight across her back, veins standing out on her forearms, each lift a testament to years of this work. I watched, chest tightening, the way her body moved sure, unflinching, like the land itself shaped her. I reached for the next one, the twine rough against my palms, the bale heavier than it looked, straw shifting inside. My arms strained, fingers digging in, but it slipped from my grip halfway across the narrow space. Dry hay scratched my skin through my sleeves, the weight pulling me off balance, my foot catching on a loose board. She was there in an instant, her hand on my shoulder, firm and steadying, fingers pressing into the muscle there. Bodies brushed in the tight confines, her hip against mine, warmth cutting through the loft's dusty heat. The contact lingered, her grip anchoring me, breath close enough to stir the hair at my neck. That touch sent a jolt, her calluses rough against my softer yield, amplifying the contrast I'd felt all day. The loft's warmth wrapped us, hay's dry scent mixing with her sweat and earth, every accidental press electric in the isolation. No one to see, just the bales, towering like walls, holding in the pull. I steadied, but my mind raced, processing the attraction through her focus. The way she scanned the space, hands capable, drawing me in. My own softness felt exposed, not weakness, but invitation, like offering a blank page to her marked lines. City life had left me adrift in thoughts, but here, her grounded presence stirred something raw, a desire to yield to that strength, to feel it close. We worked on, passing bales in the narrowing path, shoulders grazing, waists bumping as we maneuvered. The rhythm built, her lifts effortless, mine halting, but each brush heightened the tension, isolation turning proximity into something charged. Then it happened again. I grabbed a larger one, overreaching, the bale tipping forward. It dropped, straw exploding in a cloud, and I stumbled back. She caught it mid-fall, one arm snaking around to steady the load, the other grabbing my arm, hold firm above the elbow. We stood frozen, faces inches apart, her gaze dropping to my hands, then up to meet mine. The grip lingered, thumb pressing light into my skin, warmth seeping through. "You need steady hands for this," she murmured, voice low in the loft's hush, eyes tracing the lines of my arm, unflinching. No tease, just observation, but it hung heavy, hinting at more. The difference between us. Her hardness seeking my give. My pulse thudded, the words coiling low, desire flickering in that shared space. She released slow, but the air stayed thick, our breath sinking in the confined warmth. As the last bale settled, fatigue pulled at us, the sun gone now. "Break in the kitchen," she said, descending first. The cooling air outside contrasted the day's heat, leading us to the canning jars waiting on the counter. We entered the kitchen, the screen door slapping shut behind us, sealing out the cooling dusk. The room felt small, counters cluttered with jars glinting under the single bulb's hum, steam rising faint from a pot on the stove. Vegetables spilled from a basket, tomatoes red and heavy, peppers crisp, the air thick with their earthy tang mixed with vinegar's sharp bite. Isolation pressed in here too. No distant lights from neighbors, just the farmhouse standing alone against the fields. She pulled a knife from the block, its blade worn from years of slicing through tough skins, and nodded to the cutting board. "Chop these," she said, voice steady, sliding the peppers my way. I gripped the handle, fingers wrapping awkward around the wood, my palms still soft despite the day's grit. The first cut jagged uneven, the pepper splitting messy, seeds scattering like doubts across the board. Juice slicked my hands, stinging slight where a nick caught, my rhythm halting, unpracticed in such simple force. She watched, then stepped behind, her body close in the narrow space. Her hand covered mine on the knife, calluses rough against my skin, guiding the grip tighter, fingers overlapping firm. She pressed down with me, the blade sinking clean through the flesh, her wrist brushing mine, heat radiating from her arm. The contact held, her strength steadying my shake, breath warm on my shoulder as she murmured, "Hold it like this, firm, no give." We worked like that, her touch lingering through the cuts, the kitchen's warmth building with the stove's low simmer. Then she reached past for a jar on the high shelf, her waist pressing against mine, solid and unyielding in the tight corner. I froze, breath catching sharp in the quiet, her hip fitting against my side, the pressure sending a jolt low. No words, just the scrape of knife on board and our synced movements, isolation turning the room into a private pulse. My mind fixed on her hands now, those calluses tracing light along my wrist as she adjusted the blade again, rough edges scraping soft skin, desire coiling tight like vines twisting through the empty acres outside. City life had left me unmarked, thoughts sharp but body yielding. And here it felt like invitation, her grounded texture pulling at hidden wants I'd buried under deadlines and fluorescent glare. She set the knife down, eyes searching my face as we filled the first jar, steam curling between us. "This place gets lonely," she said, voice deliberate, low like the wind settling outside. Acres of nothing but wind and work. No one to share the quiet with. Her gaze held mine, unflinching, probing the lines around my eyes, the tension of my city escape. I nodded, words sticking, the admission hanging heavy in the charged air. Loneliness echoed my own. Nights in cramped apartments, screens glowing against empty walls. But here, with her, it twisted into something shared, unspoken. As I reached for another pepper, the knife slipped, edge grazing my thumb, a thin scrape blooming red. She caught my hand, quick, turning it palm up under the light. Her fingers gentle now, tracing the mark with her thumb. Calluses soft against the fresh cut, wiping it clean with a damp cloth from the sink, her touch lingering, warm and careful. No rush, just focus, eyes on the skin she'd marked without intent. My pulse thudded under her hold, the tenderness cracking her reserve, revealing the pull beneath. I sensed it mutual, the way her breath hitched slight, gaze dropping to my wrist, then up. Isolation keeping words locked, but actions electric, charged with what neither named yet. We sealed the jars, the pop echoing in the hush, her shoulder brushing mine as we labeled them side by side. The day's fatigue settled, but the heat lingered, coiling deeper in the private quiet. Night fell heavy outside, stars pricking the dark sky. "Stalls need checking," she said, grabbing the lantern. Its light cast intimate shadows as we headed back to the barn. The lantern swung from her hand as we crossed the yard, its flame flickering yellow against the black night, casting our shadows long and tangled on the ground. Horses nickered soft from the barn, sensing our approach through the chill air. Inside, the warmth hit first. Animal breath steaming in the dark, hay's dry scent mixing with the musk of hides and earth. Stalls loomed close, wooden dividers pressing the space tight. Isolation thicker now, with no moon to break the dark. She hung the lantern on a hook, light pooling dim on the packed floor, leaving corners swallowed in shadow. "Feed them," she said, nodding to the buckets by the wall, her voice low, carrying over the horse's restless shifts. I grabbed a scoop, the metal cold against my palms, oats rattling as I measured out portions. My hands shook slight from the day's ache, the feed slipping through fingers unaccustomed to the pour. One horse nudged the gate, eye glinting in the lantern's glow, and I fumbled the bucket, oats scattering across the straw. The animal stamped, warm breath puffing against my arm, body heat radiating from the stall like a living wall. She moved behind me then, close in the narrow aisle, her hands settling on my hips to steady the pour. Fingers firm through denim, splaying wide, anchoring me against her front. Her body pressed light, solid warmth cutting the barn's draft, breath stirring the hair at my nape, carrying faint sweat and lantern oil. I leaned back into that touch. Subtle, the contact pulling a quiet heat low in my gut. Her grip tightened, brief on my waist, thumbs pressing into the curve there, hold lingering longer than needed. Desire peaked in that press, raw and unspoken, her strength molding to my yield like the dark folding around us. The horses munched now, jaws grinding steady, but my pulse thudded louder, chest tight with the vulnerability of it all. Have you ever felt that in a confined space like this? The air too thick, your body betraying hidden wants with a simple lean, edges softening under another's unflinching hold. Isolation stripped it bare. No eyes but hers, no sound but breaths mingling with the animal's low woofs. My city shell cracked here, thoughts of fluorescent desks fading against this primal pull, wanting her hands to trace further, to claim the softness I'd hidden. We moved to the next stall, her presence a constant warmth at my back, guiding without words. I reached to latch the gate, but the feed bucket tipped again, oats spilling in a rush across the floor, grains skittering into shadows. The horse snorted, pawing at the mess, and I stumbled, slight, balance lost in the dim. She steadied me quick, one arm around my waist, the other catching the bucket mid-fall. We froze, faces inches apart in the lantern's sway, her breath mingling with mine. Warm, even, scented with the night's work. Eyes locked, hers unflinching, holding mine in the flickering light. Reserve giving way to quiet intensity. No words, just that gaze pulling deep, acknowledging the bond tightening in the dark. Her hand stayed on my waist, thumb brushing light, the touch electric against the barn's chill. The horses settled, munching forgotten, as the moment stretched, our breaths sinking slow. Vulnerability surfaced raw, my body yielding to her steadiness, desire coiling like the shadows around us. She released gradual, but the air hummed with it. Unspoken connection, solid in the isolation. Thunder rumbled distant as we turned back, storm brewing outside, wind picking up through the cracks. It mirrored the internal churn, pulling us toward the house and the conversation waiting in the glow. We reached the porch as the first drops hit, heavy and scattered, drumming on the tin roof overhead. The storm rolled in fast, wind whipping the fields into a blur, rain lashing sideways against the house. Isolation deepened with the downpour. No road lights piercing the dark, just the farmhouse hunkered alone, acres swallowing the thunder's rumble. She pulled 2 chairs close under the overhang, wood scraping soft, the air turning cool and charged with ozone. I sat beside her, our knees nearly touching, the storm's roar sealing us in a pocket of quiet sound. Her shoulder pressed against mine as she leaned back, solid warmth cutting the damp chill seeping through the rails. The contact grounded me, her body unyielding next to my yield, muscles relaxed but ready under the thin shirt. Lightning cracked, illuminating the yard in stark white, rain sheeting off the eaves like a curtain. No one out there now, just us. The isolation wrapping tighter, breaths sinking with the gusts. She shifted, her hand dropping to my knee for emphasis, fingers resting firm, calluses rough against denim. The touch lingered, thumb pressing light, sending a slow heat up my leg, unspoken tension coiling in the press. I turned to her, voice low against the storm's howl. What keeps you here, in all this quiet? Probing her past, the words deliberate, eyes tracing the lines of her jaw, the way rain slicked her hair darker. She stared out at the fields, unflinching, the flashes revealing the set of her mouth. The work, she said, hand staying on my knee, grip steady. Mending what's broken, day after day. But the solitude, it carves space for thoughts you can't voice elsewhere. Hints of hidden desires surfaced in her tone, low and measured, like admitting the weight of unspoken wants in rural hush. Church nods and neighbor glances, the pressure to fit, leaving pulls buried deep under chores and dawn light. Her fingers tightened, brief, the confession hanging, pulling at my own edges. Thunder rolled closer, shaking the porch posts. Internal crisis hit then. My city escape wasn't just for air, but connection. Something raw against the fluorescent grind. I admitted it, voice cracking soft. I came seeking this. Not just the farm, but you. Your letters pulled me, that strength I lack. Eyes fixed on her hands, strong and scarred, imagining them tracing more than tools, the contrast stirring low. Vulnerability exposed, my softness laid bare in the storm's lash, heart thudding like the rain on tin. Why did her grounded form draw me so? city abstractions crumbling against this real, unflinching presence. She turned, eyes meeting mine in a lightning flare, reserve softening. Isolation builds resilience, she murmured, voice even, thumb brushing my arm unconsciously, rough skin scraping light, warmth seeping through sleeve. Years alone, holding wants close. No one to see the cracks. But your yield fits against it. Her words shared the forge of solitude, hands that mended fences now resting near. The brush accidental, but charged, pulling deeper. No rush, just truth carved from the quiet, her gaze holding mine, unflinching. Tension coiled tighter, rain pounding relentless, lightning flashing to reveal flushed faces, cheeks warmed, breaths quick in the overhang's shelter. The pull toward admission grew inevitable, storm mirroring the churn inside, bodies close, her hand sliding to my thigh now, firm and seeking. Isolation urged it forward. No eyes but the dark fields, thunder underscoring the heat building between us. She stood slow, rain easing to a steady pour. Fire inside, she said, hand lingering on my arm as we moved through the door. Warmth waited, urging vulnerability deeper, leading to the confrontation of our contrasts by the hearth's glow. We stepped inside, the door shutting out the storm's tail with a solid thud, the house wrapping around us like a held breath. The living room opened small, walls paneled dark from years of wood smoke, the fireplace at its heart casting a steady glow. Flames crackled low, logs settling with pops that echoed in the quiet, isolation pressing close. No hum of city streets, just the wind rattling windows faint against the panes. She knelt by the hearth, adding a split from the stack, her movements practiced, easy, arm extending full to nudge the poker through embers. Muscles shifted under her shirt, taut and sure, the firelight playing across her skin, highlighting the lines carved from labor. I watched from the armchair, chest tight, the warmth seeping into the room, but not touching the coil inside me. She straightened, dusting her hands, eyes meeting mine unflinching as she settled on the rug nearby, close enough that our knees brushed. The isolation deepened here, the farmhouse a lone point in the dark fields, no lights to pierce the acres beyond. Flames danced, throwing shadows that merged our forms, the air thick with resin and faint damp from the rain. I reached out then, tentative, my hand finding hers where it rested on her thigh, soft palm against rough, calluses scraping light as fingers met. Textures clashed, her hardness grounding my yield, heat sparking from the contact, spreading slow up my arm. She didn't pull away, just held still, gaze steady, the touch building something raw in the fire's hush. Words came halting, voice cracking soft against the crackle. Your strength pulls at me, I said, low, eyes on our joined hands, the contrast stark in the glow. From the letters, the way you describe the work, it's what I lack, what I've chased in abstractions. City desks left me soft, adrift, but your grounded form stirs this want, deep and unnamed. Vulnerability spilled, heart thudding like the logs shifting, the admission hanging heavy. I'd buried it under routines, fluorescent glare masking the ache for something real, unyielding. Here, in her presence, it surfaced, my body leaning closer, drawn to the resilience she'd forged alone. Her eyes held mine, unflinching, the fire reflecting steady in their depths. She turned her hand, palm up, calluses facing the light, voice deliberate, low, like the embers hum. And your softness calls to me, amid all this hardness, she murmured, thumb tracing my wrist, slow, rough edge scraping gentle. Years of soil and storm built walls, but isolation carves hollows. Your yield fits there, unmarked, open, pulling at edges I've kept sharp. Watched you today, struggling but trying, and it stirred something buried, a want for that give against my hold. No rush in her words, just truth carved plain. Her gaze probing my face, reserve easing in the warmth. The rural quiet had shaped her silences, church echoes and neighbor waits pressing desires deep. But now they rose, shared in the fire's wrap. Our hands laced then, fingers threading firm, her grip enveloping mine, pulling me nearer on the rug. Shoulders pressed, her solid frame against my side, waist close as I shifted, breath sinking slow in the glow. Warm even, carrying the day's earth and our building heat. The contact deepened, her free hand settling light on my waist, thumb pressing through fabric, anchoring without demand. No words needed, just the mutual pull acknowledged, isolation allowing this raw honesty, desires surfacing unhurried, like flames feeding steady on dry wood. Vulnerability met resilience, my softness yielding to her strength, the bond tightening in the private hush. As the fire died to coals, embers glowing faint, resolution settled soft between us, circling toward a quiet mutual admission, the night deepening outside. The coals settled to a faint red pulse, the room cooling slow, shadows deepening along the walls. We stayed on the rug, bodies still close, her hand resting firm on my waist, fingers splayed through the fabric, thumb pressing light into the curve there. The touch affirmed the shift, her solidity anchoring my yield. No words needed in the hush. Isolation wrapped us tighter now, the farmhouse a lone hold against the night's wind, fields silent beyond the panes. Her breath even against my shoulder, warm and steady, sinking with mine in the dim. That contrast settled deep, her hardness grounding me where city abstractions had left me adrift. Emotional weight lifted, not gone, but shared. My softness no longer adrift, but fitted against her resilience, the pull turning anchor in the quiet. No more burying under routines or unspoken aches. Here, in her hold, it felt like home, the rural hush transforming from cage to strength we built together. Her fingers tightened brief, calluses scraping gentle, pulling a quiet heat low, the bond sealing without rush. She leaned closer, voice a whisper low against my ear, breath stirring the skin there. "I want this," she murmured, words deliberate, raw from years held close. "You, against all the hard edges." Her lips brushed my cheek, implied. Soft pressure in the fire's dying glow, sealing it. Mutual want voiced, desire coiling, fulfilled in that subtle press. No more than the touch, but everything in the intent. I turned slight, forehead resting against hers, the contact tender, her scent of earth and smoke filling the space between. Processing it hit slow, the admission's weight pressing like damp soil under boots, rich and real. Desire stirred not as storm, but steady flame, fulfilled in her hand on my waist, the way it molded to me, unflinching. City life had hollowed me with fluorescent glare and endless scrolls, but this, her grounded form, the isolation we'd turned private, filled the cracks, turning hidden wants into something solid, shared. Vulnerability eased, replaced by certainty, my body relaxing into hers, breaths mingling in the cooling air. "We'll make it work," I said soft, voice threading through the quiet. "More visits, carving out time from the commute. Turn these acres into our haven, away from eyes and echoes." She nodded, hands sliding to link with mine, fingers threading firm, calluses against soft palm. Future hinted in that hold. Weekends mending more than fences, nights like this stretching beyond the fields, isolation our private pull. Dawn crept faint through the curtains, gray light edging the room, hands still linked on the rug. Certainty settled, solid as the earth outside, the bond rooted deep in the vast quiet. Light filtered stronger now, pulling me from sleep on the rug, body stiff from the night's hold. Her arm draped across my waist, heavy and warm, fingers splayed loose against my side, thumb resting in the dip of my hip. We had tangled sometime in the dark, legs entwined, her breath steady against my neck, carrying faint earth from the fields. The room smelled of dying embers and us, sweat and skin close, isolation holding the quiet like a drawn curtain. I shifted slight, her grip tightening instinctive, pulling me back into the curve of her body, solid against my yield. Soft touches lingered there, her palm pressing through fabric, calluses scraping gentle as she stirred awake, eyes opening slow to meet mine in the gray dawn. We sat up gradual, her hand sliding to my shoulder, fingers kneading light into the ache from yesterday's work. The farmhouse creaked around us, wind settling outside, acres stretching silent beyond the windows. "Coffee," she murmured, voice rough from sleep, standing to move to the kitchen, her form outlined in the strengthening light, muscles relaxed but defined, shirt rumpled against her frame. I followed, the floor cool under bare feet, watching her pour from the pot, steam rising thick. We sat at the table, mugs warm in our palms, her knee brushing mine under the wood, steady contact in the hush. Talk turned practical then, voices low against the morning's hush. "Rural eyes watch close," she said, thumb circling her mug's rim, gaze unflinching on mine. Church nods, store whispers, folks piece things from glances. But we find spaces, the ridge trail where no paths lead, or nights like last, doors locked tight. Her words mapped it simple, resilience in her tone, turning isolation from weight to shield. I nodded, heat from her knee seeping through, the plan rooting deep. Weekends carved from my commute, hidden drives to valleys beyond the fields, building something unseen but solid. No grand escapes, just footholds in the quiet, her strength guiding the way. My growth settled in that talk. Softness no longer adrift or weak, but complemented by her grounded form, like soil yielding to roots, holding firm together. City desks had left me unmarked, thoughts sharp but body hollow. But here, against her hardness, it fit, the contrast turning asset, desire weaving through the yield. Vulnerability eased, replaced by this balance, her presence anchoring what I'd chased in letters and escapes. We moved outside as sun climbed, resuming tasks in the yard, fencing wire taut now, her hands showing mine the twist, fingers overlapping firm, sinking in the pull. Desire threaded the routine, subtle in every brush, her shoulder against mine as we worked the posts, warmth affirming the shift. Eyes met often, new understanding in her gaze, unflinching, pulling deep without words, touches on shoulders lingering, thumbs pressing light into muscle. The quiet admission echoed soft between swings. "This want stays," she said, voice deliberate, hand squeezing my arm. Bond solid in the vast quiet, fields no longer empty but filled with our unspoken pull. Packing my bag later, her hand on my waist promised return, the lasting draw bridging the miles ahead. Sun angled sharp across the yard as I slung my bag into the truck bed, the metal clanging dull against the gravel. She stood by the tailgate, arms crossed loose, watching the motion with that unflinching gaze, the kind that held without demand. The air carried faint hay and rain-damp earth, her scent clinging to my shirt from the night, musk and warmth, subtle against the wind picking up from the fields. Isolation stretched around us, no engines humming distant, just the farmhouse receding like a fixed point in the endless sprawl. I turned to her, chest tight with the pull, the quiet we'd built now facing the miles ahead. Her hand settled on my arm, fingers firm above the elbow, calluses pressing through sleeve, grounding the moment. "Come back soon," she said, voice low, deliberate, eyes tracing my face in the light. Promise in the hold. No grand words, just the certainty of shared space, waiting beyond the chores. Gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped closer, the sound sharp, wind tugging at our clothes, carrying traces of each other. Her earth on my skin, my city faintness on hers. Sensory farewell hit then. The rough underfoot mirroring the texture of her touch, the breeze underscoring what we'd bridged in the hush. Internal resolve settled deep. Desire no longer buried but transformed. A committed pull anchoring me against the commute's return. Isolation, once awake carving silences, now bridged by this, her hardness fitting my yield, turning vast acres into private lines we'd trace again. No more adrift in fluorescent stacks. Her grounded form pulled me back, the contrast solidifying what city routines had hollowed. Vulnerability eased into strength, shared in her grip, the want evolving from flicker to steady flame. You know those unspoken truths in contrast, don't you? The way a soft edge meets rough, stirring wants hidden under daily grind, isolation forcing them to surface raw. Her presence had cracked that open, city polish yielding to farm resilience. The pull mutual in ways words barely touch. We stood there, her thumb brushing my arm light, the contact affirming without rush. She pulled me closer then, hand sliding to my waist, subtle tug drawing our bodies flush brief, waists pressing in the yard's quiet. "Want more of this," she murmured, breath warm against my ear, words reinforcing the admission. Desire voiced low, no hiding now. Her hold lingered, calluses scraping gentle through fabric, sealing the want before release. I nodded, chest against hers a beat, the bond humming electric. I climbed into the cab, engine turning over rough, her figure shrinking in the mirror as fields swallowed the road. Connection endured beyond the edges, pulling taut across the distance. Isolation no longer divide, but thread holding us. The truck door thudded shut, fields rolling endless under the sun, but no longer hollow, filled with the quiet we'd claimed. Her words lingered, hands contrast promising touches yet to come, desire rooted deep. If this stirs your hidden wants in such contrasts, share below. Subscribe for more stories of unspoken pulls and isolation.